And welcome, everybody. This is another episode of the Mind Sculptors Podcast. I am your host, Callahan, and we do have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be recapping yesterday's, well, I guess when this will be coming out tomorrow, so Saturday's 2022 MLC Draft, where everybody got to pick their decks, go through and, all 128 selections. So joining me to break this all down, returning again for the third time on the channel, is everybody loves him. He just crossed over 1,000 followers on Twitter. Is the wonderful, moderately anonymous MTG, otherwise known as Dan. Dan, how are you doing today?
Hey everybody, doing great. Very excited to be here. Very excited to come back and talk about this crazy draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get to that, also want to introduce our other analyst today. And of course, you know him as your Commander Mechanic. It's our good friend, Chris. Chris, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me back. I think at this point, Common Co-Conspirator would be a good title. Yeah.
I think that's a decent way of putting it, and it's really interesting. So let's get right into it here. So we were pontificating about how we thought Najeela was going to go down to 7 there with Deco. Obviously, as we know, Nick made what was, in my opinion, the correct choice in drafting Najeela first, and it didn't. I know we kind of had talked about, Chris, that there was a potential for like a ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. Where that would just change the way people drafted. But from the looks of it, everything kind of went exactly how, not exactly, but kind of went sort of how I thought things would go. What was kind of your take on how that draft went?
So I think that there are definitely some picks that we were able to predict in here. Mm-hmm. I think that number one pick that for weeks we had as Magda changed a few things in here, but for the most part, people got the decks that they were comfortable with or the decks that they wanted for first pick, which was fantastic. However, that butterfly flapping its wings of Najeela going first pick over Magda going first pick ended up with Ian getting Magda in second round, which I think for everybody involved here is a worst case scenario for them.
Yeah, it's really funny, actually, because he wasn't even thinking it was going to get to him, because everybody was very expecting Nick to either pick it first round, or obviously people were expecting, okay, so he takes it, doesn't take it first round, but surely he takes it second round. In second round, he picks Hanada Breach. And so, if you were watching along, you would know that, especially if you watched Ian's stream, when Ian picked Magda there with the 64th pick, Nick groaned because he was planning on taking it at 65. So Dan, did Nick just get greedy here? Like, is that what happens, or?
I don't know. I think he must have, but like, I don't know. I want to believe that Nick at this point was just like, I'm just going to drop this and I'm not going to go for it. But like he was going to try to pick it up round 3. Is that the word that we're hearing? I missed out on the actual drafting experience because I was streaming last night, but I guess so. Yeah, I guess that is, I don't know. I would hesitate to call it greed, because I think that I would agree with Nick that is a third round choice. But I don't know, given what things are left when you're in Ian's position, those are starting to look like some pretty strong choices. I said this in our little group chat before we started tonight, that I also think that Ian on Magda is going to be a serious force to be reckoned with. Something Absolutely. That we talked about last time was just people who are lacking the reps against Magda. Ian's going to be able to exploit it very well. He's a very good politicker. He's definitely going to be able to work himself into some situations with Magda that people will regret allowing him to be able to get that.
Well, let's take a look at that Coalition North division here real quick, where the 4 picks we got there were number 1 for Ian was, of course, he picked Rog Silas with the 32nd pick. Then he went and picked Magda, and then Abzan Kodama stacks, and then Grist Hulk. So you've got those 4 decks there for Ian Pongo. Pongo had what I would call an absolutely incredible draft, considering he was the fact that Pongo drafted 25th in each round. And here are the decks that he drafted in order, mind you. Kenrith Evolution, Kenrith Stacks, Thrasios Tevish Midrange, and Alesha Stacks. So at least 2 of those are S tier decks, right? And then one of them, I would say, is about an A, maybe a low A, maybe a high B. And then you've got a really solid Mardu stacks list with Alesha Stacks. And I don't know how he got 2 Kenrith decks.
That's mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
Absolutely mind-blowing. The fact that the second Kenrith deck wheeled to second round is just like, what is everybody else thinking that they don't want to grab that Kenrith deck?
Yeah.
There are 2 color picks all across the board on round 2 for people ahead of Pongo in 25th. In 25th, picking up the second Kenrith deck. Right. My word, that was just. I was very happy for a lot of the players being able to get things that they enjoyed in this draft. Seemed like a lot of people got like pet decks, Sage across the board, 4 Storm decks. Very happy for them. But also the people like Pongo in this draft are allowed to draft 2 Kenrith decks is absolutely bananas to me.
And that's just to continue to go off of that. So let's look at Spleenface's draft, who managed to, with the, so Morgan drafted in the 20th spot. His first pick was Thrasios Tymna Hermit Druid. All right, that's pretty
solid.
Good. 20th
yep,
pick.
Excellent, pick 1.
52nd pick picks Thrasios Vile Hermit Druid, which was still on the board for some reason.
Yeah.
84th, he picks up Gerard Eggs, and his last pick was Esper Razakets. And we spoke about this in the group chat, and we'll get into this here in a minute. But he did drop on the waiver wire Gerard Eggs to pick up Ariumi Spellseeker, and Reed also did that with one of his draft picks as well, which was we'll just read off Reed's draft, which was first pick CST, then Blue Pod, which I can't believe Blue Pod made it that far. Third pick was Kodama Clothes at 85, and the last pick was Adaptive Sasay, which is Choir Boys list. And so both of them, I kind of theorized, so I didn't get to talk a lot of strategy with the Into the North guys. My theory is that those 3rd round picks from both of them were intentionally vague, weird picks that they were okay with playing if those were the best decks, but then seeing what gets left over and then picking up on the trades after, because they hit me up with they immediately, it was like within 10 minutes of the draft ending, where we're dropping these, this is what we want.
Those are the wild card picks. Like, those are 3rd round. You grab something that you're kind of mid on, and if something that you want wheels, drop it. I think that's a very, very smart play, especially as a 3rd round pick. I think that's right where you want to be.
Agreed. It certainly seems that way, especially given the things that end up getting left on the cutting floor. Like, if you can pick up a Dimir deck, we saw that last year with people. I think Nimrus was another one of those swap outs at the end. If you can pick up any Dimir list, that's just going to be great. It's an easy way to just Well,
we saw Scoots do that with Kells, where Kells had gone undrafted, and Scoots was like, "What am I doing playing this deck? I'm gonna pick up Kells." And so Reed notably dropped Kodama Clones to pick up Grenzo Doomsday, which is, a very, very solid deck as well. They were talking about in the broadcast over on Monarch about how Grenzo Doomsday is like a real deck.
Yeah. I play against it not infrequently. There's a person in my Patreon Discord who's a very big Grenzo fan, and it's a strong deck, you know? Like, it's Rakdos. Rakdos is good. There's a lot of good Rakdos cards these days, and it goes really fast. It really takes advantage of the London Mulligan, which is a very interesting aspect of the deck.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong. I would make that swap any day up to Grenzo.
So, especially when we're looking at the Coalition North,
the meat grinder, as we called it last time.
This is going to be exactly a grindy. I mean, when you look at the list that everybody drafted, you can pretty quickly suss out, okay, Rog Silas is never getting played in a division match. I think that's pretty safe to say, right? Yeah. I don't think Ian is going to try and play Rog Silas into that pod.
No, I wouldn't think so. Yeah, it would be a very bold decision on his part.
But like Grist, Abzan, like Kodama, which he's putting a Hulk package into. We approved that for him.
Cool.
Magda Clock even, because we've seen Magda just be fine in these stacksy, grindy board states.
Can play through those stacks pieces. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what happens in that division. It is interesting. Esper Razakats, which is a Varina list. I'm really interested to see what Morgan does with that list, because I'm a big fan of Varina, the Lich Queen, and
it's a very interesting advantage engine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go back to the draft table here. Looking, we talked about, we kind of knew this going in. We had talked to Michael. I think everybody had confirmed this with him, that he was taking Winota at number 2. Mm-hmm. And what was a bit of a curveball to the draft and the way things went down was the addition of Inkmoth stepping in for Mana Dork, who had to drop out at like this past week. So up until this point, Mana Dork was expecting to pick 3rd, and he loves to play Storm, was really big on Joyra. Now you have Inkmoth, and Inkmoth steps in, and it's green deck, green deck, green deck, green deck.
Yeah, which incredibly on brand there.
Yes, loved to see this when I looked at the results last night after stream was over.
And absolutely ecstatic on Twitter about it as well. They were like, 4 green decks, let's go. So good on them. They got exactly what they wanted out of this.
Inkmoth truly the patron saint of green. So yeah, I couldn't be happier for them to get all 4 mono green decks. I hope that they do very well in the tournament, and that they just bring mono green the shine that they always want to.
Absolutely. Well, we're seeing these monocolor decks do really well. I mean, we've seen them put up results, and I think we've seen mono white top 4. We've seen mono red top 4 and win big tournaments. There's no reason why mono green can't shine here. It's performed very well previously.
Yeah, I think it was last week that Scott said that it was like, you get a turn 2 Selvala down, you're going for a win on turn 3. If no one can stop you, it's a good deck.
Speaking of monocolors, I want to look at somebody's draft here that I thought was very interesting. I want to look down here at 29 at Higher, who had basically a monocolored draft. Higher picked, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, Kinnan Mirror with his first pick at 29. However, worse surprises was at 61, Kirk Storm. Was not expecting to see that go in the second round. 3rd round, Owl Combo. Okay, sure. That's a decent 3rd round deck.
3rd round pick.
He's been brewing around it, playing it a lot recently, sure. And then Turgrid as the final pick is a pool of cards.
That's a great way to put it. I saw Hire say on Twitter, someone asked him about the Turgrid deck, and he responded and said, that's the deck with the spice in it. So if Hire is one of the spiciest people I know. I remember him actively talking about testing with serum powder and things like that. He was he made a thread on Twitter that was, anyone suggest a card and I will start testing it in a deck somewhere. So if Hire's saying that there's some spice in Turgrid, I'm very excited to see what Hire brings with the Turgrid deck. It's going to be something completely out of left field.
Yeah, I am very, very eager to see what he ends up doing with this list and how it ends up performing, because we know that Turgid is a boogeyman at casual tables.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, hey, look, the higher in power level you get up, the less of a concern it is. Let's have Hire prove them all wrong on that, because I'm eager to see it.
I'll tell you, I used to play Turgid in a Wheel Thief deck, and the incremental value that you pick off of weird things like Mystic Remorse going away from your cumulative upkeep triggers and things like that, you get absolutely wild amounts of value. You're playing Dart Deal or something like that, and you start picking up people's mana rocks, and it's really easy to piece together some really fantastic things with Turgid, so I'm excited to see Hire play it.
I think it's going to be interesting because I think so this is like we've talked about for the last few weeks, is that because of the restriction on how many color decks like exist in the format that you can draft, you are going to see a higher number of these monocolor decks just kind of naturally come to the top, just because of the nature of the fact that there's limited resources. So, once you get down to the end here, but I mean, it looks like going in, his, expectation was, I want to take monocolor decks. And it's interesting, you kind of flip that with somebody, the mono white guys, right? Look at Michael Levine, right? So Levine obviously is playing very much within his wheelhouse. He's playing Winota Stacks, a deck he's very comfortable on. He's playing Armix Timna, which is his deck. He's very comfortable on that. He's playing 4-color Controller, Wild Pile, and he's playing Orvar. And so, like, even Michael is kind of in single colors a little bit, but also has a 4-color deck, which was his 3rd round pick, by the way.
Yeah.
When we had talked about the draft weeks ago and said, look, these great 3 and 4 color decks are going to get snapped up in round 2. There's just such a volume of them that they're naturally going to bleed over. I wasn't expecting these good 4 color decks to go round 3 as well. I was expecting them to be taken in much higher priority than this.
Yeah.
Not only that, Food Chain Sliver dropped all the way down to the 70th pick in the 3rd round.
Yeah,
I was talking with Claire before this. Claire picked Kess on pick 2, knowing that they could come to me and like talk about the deck and strategies and things like that. So we were just sitting down and talking over a few of her deck lists. I couldn't believe that Food Chain fell down so far. And we were talking about it. And it's like, oh, Food Chain is like, I'm sorry to Food Chain players, but I think Food Chain is bad. It just falls to so many things. It's not really great. You have to run a lot of weird cards. The Food Chain Sliver deck, though, they're off of like the older things that I remember, like the Manipulate Fates of the world are gone from the list. They're down to just Extract and like the Tainteds. But
it's also like a layered list too.
Yeah, it's just a 5-color consultation list. It's just Kess with extra silences, like it just does good stuff. It's a great deck. Like I cannot believe 5-color slivers went down that far.
Well, and especially because I know Scotty had brought up, I believe it was last week, that he had mentioned, if it gets to Kill Stars, he would not be surprised to see Kill Stars take Food Chain Sliver, and he wheeled it twice. So
that's a fall from grace for that deck. It absolutely is.
Yeah, true.
Just the fact that a 5-color deck went round 3 and wasn't snapped up in rounds 1 or 2, again, blows my mind.
I'm a relatively new to cEDH player. I think like 2019-ish I started playing, but I remember Food Chain Sliver being like one of the decks in the format that was like just incredibly strong and consistent.
Yeah, it was S tier for a while. Absolutely.
And now you have all these rule of law decks, and we're probably going to talk about them in a moment. But there's rule of law decks everywhere, and those Food Chain lists they play there was always that running joke before, right, where Food Chain lists couldn't win through a Ristic study. It's even worse when there's a bunch of rule laws going around because they literally cannot win through that.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only that, but like Drannith too, just another one of like the most popular cards right now to be playing in white. It just, there are so many things that puts a food chain out in the cold that, but at the end of the day, you just have consultation and you have access to Sevens Rec and Underworld Breach lines. Like there are just so many things that you can do just under the umbrella of just having 5 colors that just, it's inherently incredibly strong.
Yep. And I think that increase in the prevalence of white in a lot of these decks and those stacks pieces just being ubiquitous now has really killed a lot of the combo potential out of a lot of the format. Now we go hard value over the straight combo decks because you're losing to the Dranniths, you're losing to the rule of law effects, and those stacks pieces are just everywhere. You don't have to be in a hard stacks decks to run these stacks pieces, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's really interesting to kind of go through and look at all of these lists and kind of see where people landed. You know, we talked about Kill Stars. Kill Stars ended up going with Thrasios Vile Turbo, Timnatana Hermit Pod, which, you know, it's just Sans Blue Hermit Druid, Rog, and that is his deck too, for what it's worth. So like he's super comfortable on that deck, and the fact that he got to pick that second, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Huge for him. Rog Tevish Turbo round 3, and then Harvest Animar. And so Killstars killed it. I think he had an absolutely wonderful draft.
Yeah, no, he did. And last pick Animar is like, that's honestly another really surprising one. Like Animar, another deck that has sort of fallen from favor. It's sort of like certainly not respected as much as it used to be, but it's Teamer. You know, Teamer's good. There's a lot of really good things he can do.
Look how many 3-colored decks were available for picks in the 3rd round or in the 4th round.
In the 4th round, like Bant Stoneblade going fourth round. Like, there's just a lot of really good stuff that wheeled so many times. Yeah,
Ken got a last pick Abzan ad nauseum deck, I think. Yeah, there's lots of really good things to still pick up in round 4.
And he randomed into that the what was it, the Tyam deck.
Tyam, yes, yeah.
His last 2 picks were random, so he randomed into Timnacrom Stacks, darn, and Tyam Abzan Druid.
I was saying that to him last night. We were chatting real quick before I got to bed after stream, and I was just like, "Oh, congrats on picking up Timnacrom." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I got it randomly, but like, it's got to be good." It's like, you're darn tooting about that. It's got to be good.
It's just Timnacrom and then stacks pieces and hate bears, and you win by outvaluing your opponents. That's what you do. That's all it is.
Yeah, I saw him interested in the Tyam deck as well, saying, does anybody play this deck? Can anybody talk to me about this? Because I have never played it before. So
it is a very complicated list. I will say that. That is one of the decks
Rebel getting some enthusiastic help from the Tyam Discord, so hopefully they come out again and they can help Ken out.
Yeah, I'm sure. So speaking of Rebel, Rebel random drafted again. She was not here present doing it, but she had given me a randomized sheet. I had randomized it, again to make sure that it was a little bit more random. So we had a random stuff, and so as things got crossed off, you just picked the next thing, and we went down. So she got, in order, Snake Farm, which when I told her what she drafted, she was like, "What the hell is Snake Farm?"
I read that this morning, and I was like, I have never heard of Snake Farm. I do not know what that is.
It's literally, and it's kind of a meme deck, because it's literally Timnatana Farm, but with Ikra and Bruce as the commanders. And
I have
the
seen
primer
Cam from
links,
Play to Win play this.
Yeah, the primer links to the Timnatana Farm, primer. So it's like literally the same deck. It's just different commanders. It's quite hilarious. But so she ended up getting that, randomed him to Timnatana Hulk again.
What are the odds?
2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And that was a great deck too. At least she played it well last year, and it's like
that's what she played in the playoffs.
It does cool stuff.
It's a Hulk deck. How is it not a good deck? Like it's gonna do the thing.
Then she got Bant Kodama, which is Kodama and Ishai, right? Yeah. Kodama and Ishai. and then Mardu Stoneblade, which is Arden and Vile Smasher. And so, like, those are 4 fine decks, right? Like, all of those are good. And I think she's going to be able to do completely well. And it's very funny because I know a lot of people were talking about, well, when we're drafting here towards the end of this list, we're not going to have very many chances to get good high color lists. I don't know that ended up being accurate, right?
Not at all. No.
No, and I think that feeds into the whole thing we were talking about last week with just lots of people taking comfort picks where people weren't highly prioritizing. Nobody took Kenrith until pick 60. Like, just people picking things that they enjoyed, which, like, I mean, again, where like we see Michael taking the pick 2 white black when like there are lots of 5 and 4 color options still available, but it's his deck. He's good at playing it. So like, it's a fine pick for him, honestly. And it just, it panned out where there was this really just even spread of value across the draft, which honestly, I think is great. It's going to make for a really awesome league.
Yes. I agree with you 100% on that. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people, I think Flower had probably what I would say is probably one of the best drafts of everybody out there, honestly. Picking up Cody at number 8, Teamer Polykraken at number 40, Hullen midrange at 72. Is it Polyhorn at 104? So, I mean, those are all like solid decks, right? Like,
yeah. And exactly what she wanted, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Veil of Death was another person that had a really good pod of just Armix Crom in first, 4-color Luris second, Toxtrol Control, which is like, I think I'm really interested to see it in how it does in the league this year against the other decks. I mean, I'm a Toxtrol stan, so obviously I got my biases, but I'm very interested to see how it does in the environment. Grolnok, not as great. I also a Grolnok stan, but I admit that it's quite bad.
Grolnok will probably run into some issues.
Yeah, Grolnok it definitely has issues, but another solid.
What is the trade deadline, by the way? Is there still a chance for Death to potentially get rid of that?
Potentially. People have until Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Central time, to get in to DM me their trades. So if you're listening to this Monday morning, you have until 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to DM me and trade your list out. And so that is what's going on as far as that. Now, one of the distinctions with the trades was you can't pick up a deck that somebody dropped. So once somebody picks it, it's gone.
Sorry,
and
Gerard
so
Eggs fans.
What'd you say?
Said sorry, Gerard Eggs fans.
Yeah,
yes,
losing out on this one.
And the reason for that specifically, just to kind of elaborate on that, was to make sure that because we didn't want players like picking decks so that they could trade it to their friend and, stuff like that. And so it's specifically so you can't do like, oh, I'm going to drop this deck and then, he's going to come and he's going to pick up the deck.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? So it specifically kind of tries to evade, I think is the word I'm looking for, those sorts of situations. But so far as far as trades as of this moment, what the trades so far have been, we talked about Sick, we talked about Spleen. The very first transaction though was Ryan dropping Siona Boonweaver combo for Croaks of World Gorger Dragon. And what are your all thoughts on that?
I like it. Honestly, I do. I think it's a nice little list, and it's sleek in the 2-color decks here. And it's definitely one of those that can fly under the radar and win through a lot of pieces as well. I think it's a good pickup.
Yeah, I think the Croaks is a lot more defensible than Siona. There's just I don't know, the Siona list, it's certainly fine and it has its defenses, but the Croaks just has the advantage of being Rakdos and having advantage of some really, really high quality cards in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. The other transaction that has been made was what was it? Charles dropped Aurelius Stacks in favor for mono white Death and Taxes for the Dog and Pony show. So we are seeing Yoshimaru get played in the league. There was some concern that the goodest boy would not be able to see play there for a moment. Don't worry, Charles dropped Aurelia in favor of that.
All those Aurelia stands, though, shedding a tear.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Scoots.
It's Scoots. Yeah, we can name names. It's Scoots.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know that. I mean, I'm certainly not going to disparage Yoshimaru. You can listeners get that out of your mind right now. Yoshimaru, best boy. I'm glad he's being played. Champions of us all. But I think that Aurelia possibly better. I don't know. It's a weird deck though. It definitely it asks for quite a few things to go right. I wouldn't say like the most amount of things to go right, but it has a couple questions and needs some answers.
One of the things Charles said when he traded it, and of course, it's Charles. He gave me his full logic for why he's doing it.
We got the 42 tweet thread.
Yeah. The thought process behind it is that as he was building his version of it and he was going through all the different versions and kind of making tweaks that were to his play style, he was like, this is just turning into Elishnorn or Yoshimaru Keleth. So why am I not just playing that? And, and I think that's a perfectly valid point where because one of the things with that Aurelia deck is you're going to have to play the Helm combo, which means you're probably on some amount of Stoneforge package. And he was like, I don't want to be playing the Stoneforge package in this. And so he ended up deciding to move to a deck that fit what he wanted to be doing better.
And Dog and Pony show much lower to the ground as well.
Yep.
I think that it's for the environment that we're playing in. I don't think that you want to be doing the Aurelia Helm combos in this. You're going to have people that are going to try and do all of the stack stuff possible. And we aren't going to draw games out as long as people, I think, are planning. So being much lower to the ground and accruing the kind of value that you can at a Dog and Pony show, I think it's a good call to drop Aurelia stacks. Again, sorry, all you Angel fans out there.
I mean, honestly, when we're talking about a kind of player like Charles, it comes to the point that I think like beyond, do we think deck for deck is a good switch? Like, I just trust Charles' judgment, honestly, as a player and just knowing how he plays best.
If the dude wants to run a mono white deck, nobody's going to stop him. I mean, of all the people in the world.
Well, and that's so very interesting. Very interestingly, speaking of mono white, with that pickup, all of the mono white decks did get picked. All 5 of them.
Yeah.
There were only 2 mono blue decks that got picked as of the recording of this. 3 of the mono black decks got picked, which I was shocked.
2 by higher. I mean, we know Hire's to blame for that.
Yeah. Well, one of them's Adam picking Yawgmoth, which Yawgmoth I get. I've been playing a lot with Yawgmoth recently. Yawgmoth's insane.
It's a very strong card.
Yeah, it's an insane magic card. Mono red, only 3 of the 5 got picked. Mono green, obviously we know, Inkmoth took all of them, but the only category that didn't, that was the only monocolored category that had all of its decks selected. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked at the spreadsheet or not, or if you were actively looking at it. Do you know which 2-color category did not have a single color selected?
Oh, I do.
I don't think Chris does. I want to see Chris guess.
No. Do I see a green-white list on here or not?
There's Adaptive Sisay.
Okay, you're close.
And Siona got drafted.
Hint, it's the worst 2-color pair.
Everybody's going to say blue-white. But I'll spoil it for you. It is not a single red-green deck got picked in this draft. Not a single list. So,
The Gruul decks are in a weird position right now in the meta. Yeah. I think they have some good, strong combos, but many of the decks are on Kiki combos, which, again, like Food Chain, get shut off by a lot of things. I feel like a lot of the Gruul decks are pulling themselves in sort of different directions with their strategies and axes that they're fighting on. And I don't know. I guess there's not enough Molochs, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the person who is the Rurik Thar, the brewer. Not enough of those people in the world shouting from the rooftops that they should be playing Rurik Thar at the moment, I think. They're like fairly strong decks, but I mean, I'm personally not particularly interested in the Gruul decks of the world either, so I can understand going for different decks over them. And I mean, when you compare those to like things like Crick or even AO, those work on some very interesting axes that I think are like currently a little bit stronger than just Snoop Piles.
Right. Well, next piece of trivia for you guys. Which 3-color deck did not get selected?
Oh, this is a good question.
Ooh. I don't know. My first guess is one of the Mardu ones, since all of the Mardu ones were picked very late in the cycle.
Okay. That's not a bad guess. Dan, do you have a guess?
My instinct says that it can't be Mardu because I love Mardu. I would have to think it's got it. No, it's not Abzan. Gosh. I don't know.
It is Naya with Shuffle Atla not getting picked.
Oh.
Wow, interesting.
Atla Palani, to the surprise of nobody, did not get picked.
I'm sorry. Somebody had to get talked out of picking Shuffle Atla, if I recall correctly. So, I mean, someone out there was thinking about it. I don't remember if it was Jib or Cobble, but somebody was thinking very hard.
Well, I do believe that Cobble was saying he was planning on taking it first. And I said this. I know I said it on Twitter, and I don't remember if I said it in the podcast episode. But when I genuinely was like, with Cobble, I don't know if it's bullshit or not, because
Cobble's got a very dry sense of humor. Very, very
sometimes he just plays it so straight that you're like, man, I have no idea if you're being for real or not, and I hate it. But yeah, speaking of Cobble, I think had a pretty solid draft. Picked up Blood Pod with the 5th selection there. Esper Farm, another deck that he's really good with. He loves Timna Sakashima there at the 37th pick. What is that? Sultai Raza mid-range, which is Armix Thrasios there in the 3rd round at 69th pick. Nice. And he picked Blue-White Shift Flash as his 101st pick. And he said in the draft, that was one of the ones that we said you could play either Taigam, Grand Arbiter, or Shorikai. And he was like right off the bat, I want to play it as Shorikai. I was like, okay, you can decide when you submit, but that's, yeah. So we know he's going Shorikai. And I'm fairly confident he will end up, because Esper Farm was another one of the ones you could pick between either Malcolm or Sakashima. Knowing Cobble, I expect that to be a Sakashima for sure. But yeah, so I mean, he had a solid Sultai Armix is really good into these sorts of metas.
Yeah, it allows you a lot of flexibility because, I mean, obviously it gives you access to black, so you get all the great tutors and everything, but just that ability to control the board, cast it very easily with a Jeweled Lotus, great attacker. It's just, it's a really, really strong card.
Yeah, and you can layer that deck as well and have a lot of different lines in it too. So it's just versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of one of the questions I think is my biggest question for you guys is, and I'll start this with Chris. Chris, who do you think had, in your opinion, like the best draft of the 32?
So
maybe not even maybe not even the best, but your favorite draft of the 32.
Okay.
Best or favorite, either works.
Pongo picking up the 2 Kenris decks, I think like that is all-star draft right there. Just from the first 2 picks, getting to pick the 2 Kenris lists, I think that right there wins you the draft. Getting 2 5-color lists, round 1, round 2. I think that's fantastic. I would say that a lot of other people had personal wins in their drafts as well, grabbing a lot of decks that they wanted, a lot of stuff that they were really comfortable with, and you just love it for them individually. So overall, I think that there were very, very few misses overall in this draft. But as to who had the best draft, I think Pongo being able to pick up the 2 Kenris decks back to back in rounds 1 and 2, I think that
I can't believe that
exactly
got 2 Kenris decks. That's just insane.
Right. And that alone, that's draft winning worthy right there.
Yeah.
Dan, is do you share Chris's opinion here?
I think that the very strong case for Pongo, if we're going to say if we're going to declare a winner of the draft with just highest quality picks, I think that that's probably a very, very strong argument for that. I'd be hard pressed to say that, I don't know. There are some other people who got some very, very good ones. Spleen picked up some really good things. Sick picked up some good things. Claire picked up Kess, so Claire is my personal winner. Claire wins the draft to me. And she also got Krark Socket Clones, which historically has been doing very well. She's a really good player, and I know that she's going to take her time to really get her shit down with this deck. So I'm excited to see her do well with that. Sage, also very honorable mention for Sage, drafted 4 straight Storm decks. So I know they're just absolutely losing their mind.
Favorite decks as well.
They got exactly what they wanted.
Exactly.
Literally, when I talked with Sage, those were the 4 decks that were at the top of their draft order.
Yeah.
And they got all 4 of them. And
they're all really great decks too. Just absolutely solid picks. So very excited to see how they do in this draft, because we saw last year, some people getting some things that were not as home base as the groups of picks seem to be this year. It seemed like there's just a lot more good feeling spreads of decks in this meta.
Mm-hmm. One of the other drafts that I thought was really, I honestly think Fukins also had an incredibly good draft, getting Razakats round 1, which is
that was counter to what we predicted.
We were expecting Godo from him at some point.
Yeah, and the fact that Razakats went round 1 too. The first predictions that we made, Scoots said there's no way Razakats gets picked round 1, and here it is.
So, you have little faith.
Yeah. Razakats going there. Advantage Thrasios at 49th. Derevi Stacks is a solid list as somebody who plays with Pongo frequently. And then, Jund Rograk Turbonaz. And this is a deck that Shaper and Whimsy have been really, really high on recently as a very solid Jund Turbonaz strategy.
The fact that you get a 3-color Nas deck round 4 as well. I mean, I wouldn't have expected it to go that far.
And a Rograk one too. That's a lot of really solid value, getting those extra rituals and things that you get with access to Rog.
Oh yeah, the brittle effigies and whatnot, or the burning effigies, and
Infernal Plunge, just the turn 1 calling the weak and all that thing. It has the potential for some extremely explosive starts. I'm used to playing with Bunny Joe Burton and their Rog Citadel deck, and it is just absolutely so explosive. It's
explosive. I've seen those opening hands that she posts. Yeah. The hey, here's a turn 1 win. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're really, really fearsome. Once you know the deck well and you know what you're looking for, they can absolutely brutal openers.
So another list of a draft that I'm interested to hear your opinions on is Josh Mind Muscle Magic, the newest Sculpty boy, as he calls himself, the Muscle Sculptor. So he drafted Teamer Pirates, or Teamer Malcolm, Esper Doomsday, which is Timna Malcolm. He drafted Elish Norn Stacks, which evidently he sniped from Charles, because Charles was planning on drafting that round 3.
Yeah.
And he got Orzhov Stoneblade or Rebel's hand-in-hand deck. So you're seeing the Teamer Pirates, we saw that go pretty far last year in the league be very successful. We saw Esper Doomsday, which is probably one of the new up-and-comers in cEDH right now, right? And then 2 Staxy decks at the back end there. Like, I think he had a really solid draft overall. Nothing above 3 colors, but all decks that I think are like going to take him pretty far.
That Teamer Malcolm deck is real good and has only gotten better since last year's league. Like it is just a deck that keeps getting better and better. And I would expect it to do some real work for him, for sure. It's a great round 1 pick.
Yeah, any of these decks that are just heavily reliant on their creature-based combos are going to do really well into these metas unless people are really packing the mana drains and the delays, which I would definitely heavily advise people to do because you're going to get steamrolled by some of these decks like the Teamer Malcolms of the world that just are going to come in with their creature-based combos and just your Dispel isn't going to do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and here's the type of hand that you're going to want to keep. Because Jim from the Spike Feeders drafted a deck very near and dear to my heart with Grease Fang vehicles, or as I call it, Grease Fang's Big Beautiful Buicks. And I had an opening hand the other day that was actually on Veil of Death's channel, where Ryan is going first, Mord on Elsha is going second. Ryan was playing Selvala. I'm going third, and Death is going fourth, playing Tevish Thrasios. And Selvala has to mold down to like 5, I think. Plays a turn 1 land. Jeweled Lotus into Selvala. Cool. Passes the turn. We see some mana rocks come out of Mord. I go, cool. Land. Mox Diamond. Mana Crypt. Linvala. Pass. Yes. And everybody at the table groaned. Yeah. So that is going to be, Jim, the type of opening hands that are going to take you places in this league. It just and overall, I think we talked about this earlier. I think, Jim, overall, randoming into Brea Consultation, Brea, it's 4-color good stuff. It can only be
fulfilling
so
my
bad,
prediction
right?
that Jim would take a Consultation deck pick one,
which is hilarious that he did it randomly.
Randomed into it. It's great.
He was not prepared for somebody to take Minsk before him.
Exactly. We had talked about that too, that Jim was looking to very highly pick Minsk and Islane takes it the turn before him. What are the odds?
Yeah. And Islane was just quietly sitting there like, nobody knows what I'm going to pick. Nobody's really super familiar with me. But after talking with him, that's one of his pet decks. He brews it all the time. It's one of his, most comfortable slots. And so he was like, I'm going to grab it right now. I know Jim wants it. And so he got it. And then Jim just pops into the chat and he goes, Cal, I need you to random for me. I don't have a backup plan. So
did not prepare for this.
Great.
He got Brea. Brea is really good. Grease Fang, of course. You've heard me sing the praises of that deck on this channel. He picked up, and this is interesting. I'll come back to this in a second once we go through this whole list. But Urza Polykraken at 3. And then Cole Clampstorm in the 4th round. Urza has every year so far that we've done this. It was like high round 2 last year, and this year it dropped to like the middle of round 3.
Yeah,
like people have just come off of Urza like altogether. It feels like.
I think that's
There's
a mistake.
A lot of new toys in the world.
Yeah, I think that Urza is just always a really, really solid deck, no matter how you build it. It's just a fantastic piece to sit in the command zone. Whether you end up casting him or not, I think it's fantastic. There's no way you don't get value out of an Urza deck, and I'm shocked to see it fall this late. I think that this is the year for monocolor decks. I think that's what we're going to see here. We saw them pick very, very highly throughout the draft, and we're seeing more 3-color lists go later rounds than we are the monocolored lists. I think that we've really seen the table set for these monocolored decks to be the all-stars this year.
Yeah, I would love to see people, the confidence of people like Hire just pay off for them throughout this league, and just really, because there's a lot of talk about just you don't pick the monocolor decks because they're not as good as the 4 and the 5 color piles, which is like true to a certain extent. And then there's also just the other side of the coin that there's also the players behind these decks, and you need to consider just what being a good player does for the deck that's in your hands.
Yeah,
well, I'd love to see us be able to change the conversation on just
we had a comment on, I think it was our last video, or it was the video before, where we were breaking these down, where one of the commenters was like, you guys are crazy. There aren't going to be any 4 or 5 color decks left after the first round. There were 5 color decks all the way into the third round. And 4 color decks all the way into the third round. Like, people were drafting I feel very intentionally outside of Ken and Rebel, right?
Yeah.
Ken with his first 2 picks was very, very intentional, but like Rebel was full random, right? And so, you know, we're seeing all of the mono white decks get played. Obviously, there's 2 mono white guys there, but Nick is playing one of the white decks, which is Oswald. So it'll be very interesting. Were there any decks? I'll start. I'll last question before we wrap up. Dan, were there any decks that didn't get picked that you're surprised by?
I didn't actually see the final list of what is on the chopping block right now. Do we have a list of what's still off of the picks?
Yeah. It should be. Let me just hit you. While I'm doing that, Chris, did you have any decks that you were especially surprised by?
Now that you've said that none of the red-green decks got picked, I'm shocked that none of them went. Right? Rurik has always traditionally been pretty solid, if unexciting, from a win-con perspective. It doesn't have the kind of explosive lines that a lot of decks do, but in the metas that we're seeing and the pods that we're going to be playing, I would expect it to do some real work. So the fact that none of these red-green decks got picked is it's a shocker to me.
Well, and the fact that Timmy drafted it last year and played it to some pretty good success. Timmy didn't even touch it. Timmy took, Dawnwaker, picked up Niv Mizzet again, Godo this year, and then Bruce Kamal. And so, like, Timmy told you with his final pick, right? Hey, I still like red-green stacks, but hey, I'd also like white, please. Because, Bruce Kamal is very similar to, like, Rurkthar in a lot of ways, right? Very similar lines, very similar stacks pieces.
And only 2 of the mono blue decks got picked as well.
Yeah.
Right? It just Orvar and Urza. We didn't see Chip Dip, the reality chip deck, go.
Yeah, the Reality Storm and Lear is the other one that was not picked here.
Yeah.
Which one a little bit surprises me. I know we saw some people like jokingly tweeting about trying to make this the year of mono blue and get some mono blue decks in the top 4. But Lear, I think, has some like legitimate gas behind it, in the hands of a good pilot. I think it can do pretty well.
Well, all 5 mono white decks go and only 2 mono blue decks go. I think it for what we are seeing as a very, very heavy investment in monocolor decks and the favor that they're stirring up right now, I would expect blue and mono blue in particular to rank much higher than it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Because when you just think about if we're thinking in a vacuum about just the average cards inside of the decks, the things that you are able to put in your mono blue deck versus your mono white deck, like there's just some really good cards, and obviously having access to counter magic to be able to protect your combos and everything. Yeah.
Well, and that's like, especially if we're looking at like monocolor decks, I think like Jim, like just the fact that he just got Urza round 3, like It is shocking to me that a deck like Urza Polykraken, which for a long time was like considered one of the best decks in the format, just dropped and dropped and dropped, and it didn't seem like anybody was going to take it.
Well, to speak to what Chris said, there are so many very like attractive, enticing sort of looking decks to be picking alongside this. That's the Urzas of the world really fall by the wayside when there's just so many partner commanders that you can choose from, and just partners just so inherently good that it really pushes the wants to play the older decks like that down a lot more, unless you have people who are like really advocating for their health in the format.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that about wraps things up for us here today. Before we sign off, just want to give you both, Chris will obviously, just kind of tell us a little bit about the channel, where people can find you, and what you're all about. Also, by the way, congratulations on your preview card that you just had.
Thanks. Yeah. It came out Sunday for those of you watching on Monday. Super stoked for that. Thanks to Wizards for the hashtag free preview on that one. But apart from that, hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic. You can find me everywhere fine content is made by searching Commander Mechanic, especially on YouTube, where I do deck techs and combo explainers and a whole bunch of cool stuff. I'm very, very close to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, hoping to hit it by the end of April. So if you aren't subscribed, head on over there, toss a sub to your Witcher.
Smash that like button, right? We don't just hit that.
Sorry.
We smash.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, you got to
right?
break your computer.
Yeah, got to break.
If your computer's not broken after you subscribe to Chris and I, then you're not doing it correctly.
Well, and that transitions perfectly. Dan, tell us a little bit about Moderately Anonymous.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Dan, aka Stormy Daniel, Moderately Anonymous MTG. I am a YouTube and Twitch streamer. You can find me on Twitch every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, streaming mostly cEDH, but sometimes Legacy and Vintage and Casual EDH as well. And I put out new edited gameplay videos on YouTube every Saturday at noon Eastern. Moderately Anonymous MTG on all the platforms, all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for having me, Callahan. This was a really, really fun time. Very glad to come back and chat about everyone's picks. This was very, very exciting. Very much looking forward to the league. Yeah. It's going to be a really great time.
Well, now we have to wait as they put their decks together, get everything together, get ready, get their practice games in, and begin to get down there and start playing. First game is going to be May 7th. And that's going to be between the Coalition divisional round. So if you have any division, so you're going to be seeing Ian, Pongo, Six, Spleen, Hal, Inkmoth, Killstar, Shawnee, Cobblepot, Kai, Rebel, Adam, Sliverboy, Hire, Ken, Ryan, and Sage, all on May 7th.
What a lineup.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
And they play each other back to back because they're all playing their divisional games that weekend, their first set of two. So that will be May 7th. Games start at 2 p.m. That will be when kickoff, as it were, or die roll, or what is it? First draw. Is that what we should call it? First draw will be at 2 p.m. And that will be all MLC coverage this year will be over on Monarch Media over on Twitch. They're covering the live events for us this year. So go and check them out on Twitch as well. With that being said, I do want to thank you guys for joining us today. Just a quick reminder, go follow us on Twitter at SculptyBoys. You can find a direct link in the link tree as well. To that. Also, make sure to go follow at MLC_league on Twitter to get all of your MLC news and updates as well. Want to also give an extra shout out to some high tier patrons, which is Just M, CZ, David Snavely, Dionyches, Jason Bialik, Matt Boehner, and Senior Coupon. If you too would like to become a patron, you can head on over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors or check out the link in the description. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this video or any of our MLC draft coverage videos. If you want to see more content like that, please make sure to subscribe and go subscribe to these lovely people that joined me today. Thank you again for joining us, and from all of us here at the Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and we'll see you next time.
I'm in line with the stars, I'm in sync with the earth. 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'ma ride for the squad, let her ties in the hearse. I've been on the vibe kinda hard talk, but the last one they hear, eyes blurry, but I couldn't see the ass. And he